All right. Welcome to episode 190 of the Artcasters. And we have two guests today, which is kind of awesome. So we'll just do the around and introduce everybody. So I'm Joshua Kemble. This is my channel, so you know where to find me. If you ever want to read my comic about faith and mental illness, check it out at quarterlystories.com, or you can read it on Android or iOS by going to topis.io and searching for Quarterly Stories. So that's my stuff out of the way. Scott, where can everybody find you? And if they are in need of, I don't know, if they're struggling making their comic, they need some stuff to make their comic a little spiced up and better. Where can they get that stuff?
Oh, yeah. Well, if you're looking for something like, say, a comic maker starter kit that has comic book fonts and brushes and templates and all that stuff, and it's totally free, you can go to circworks.com and just pick that up, join my mailing list, and there's also cool stuff on the mailing list once you're all signed up to that. And that's at circworks.com, and also I'm on YouTube at Circworks. I don't know, just search Circworks on YouTube. It's SERKWORKS. And cool. Oh, and also, if anyone's interested, I'll be on, if you guys follow Alterna Comics, I'll be on their channel tomorrow, I think 10 p.m. Eastern time, talking about some of the changes with Etsy and just getting your own store and kind of doing your own thing instead of relying so much on some of the online storefronts and stuff that are out there. So.
Nice. All right. That's actually really exciting. That's tomorrow?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'll try to check that out. Cory Kerr, who is my co-host of the 48-Hour Art Check, is a special guest today. And Cory, where can everybody find your work?
You can find my work at corykerr.com. And my webcam is not working, so you just see that on the screen. But yeah, I've got that there, and most of the stuff I do is like Instagram, YouTube, and Twitter, but it's all kind of linked at corykerr.com.
Awesome. All right, and then our other special guest today is animator extraordinaire Jim Lujan. He's done indie animation forever. He's basically done movies that have been in theaters. He is an incredibly talented guy. And I hope I built you up just enough.
And a really good musician.
So, yeah, he is an extraordinary musician. So, anyhow, with all that out of the way, our guest is Jim Lujan. So, Jim, how's it going? Where can people find your stuff?
You can also find my stuff at corykerr.com. You can find my stuff on YouTube mainly, and in dark alleys and such. But if you go to YouTube, it's JimLujan, and watch a lot of my many films with limited animation and happiness.
It's not the film happiness; it's just full of happiness.
That's true.
Actually, if you guys do check out Jim's stuff, definitely make sure to check out his latest web series, All That Glitters. It's really hilarious. And
I second that.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll have to kind of talk about that a little bit. So I kind of wanted Cory on here to talk animation because I don't do animation. I have dipped my toes in that pond maybe once, and it's mystifying to me.
And your toe got infected.
Yeah, exactly. And it's something I'm considering, but Cory does it a lot more frequently, and Cory's starting up a limited animation project. And so I thought it would be good for you two to kind of talk about indie animation, limited animation, and maybe just a little bit of the why. Why would actually be a good place to start. So
why do you torture yourselves, guys?
Yeah, Cory, why? Why, Cory?
Oh man, I don't even know. I've only been doing it for maybe a year at the most, I think. And
you've already bypassed me, I'm sure.
I doubt it, but I think why is just because I really enjoy, things that take a really long time for very little output. I think that's what it is. I don't know. It's fascinating for me. I tell you, I introduced animation into one of the classes that I teach, and I had one of my students tonight tell me, because we had a little mini award ceremony, and she told me, she said, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing!" Blah 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 blah. And what she said, I think, kind of encapsulates what I love about it, which is being able to make something that I illustrate move, like adds like a new dimension of life to it, and there's so much more that you can communicate with it that way. And I thought, yeah, that's a good way of doing it, because I mean, like, there are times where, I mean, this upcoming generation specifically, they will avoid reading, a 500-word article, but they will sit. That might take them 5 minutes, but they will sit and watch a 10-minute video that has 5 minutes or 500 words of captions, and they'll read those captions with the sound off. And so there's something about like movement that is kind of like captivating, more so than a lot of other forms of communication.
Nice.
So I think people are just kind of drawn to movement, but I don't know. I don't know why I do it, but that's why some people like it.
So Jim, why did you kind of decide to do indie animation? I mean, like, I remember, I think we've had you on in the past, and I think in that the last time we had you on, we kind of got into a little bit of like when you had your own TV show and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's actually episode 101.
Yeah.
And so it's almost not quite 100 episodes ago.
It's chock full of technical difficulties too. I remember I had like a horrible connection that day. Yeah, I had a connection dysfunction. So.
But what kind of drove you to like get into animation in the first place, and then why limited animation?
I think at one point, at first, I think I was interested in doing comics, kind of like Dan Clowes, or those that whole like the the Flying Burrito Brothers or whatever their name, the 60s weird, indie comic books, and I wanted to tell a story in that format. And then very, very early on, I realized it was very difficult. And I know that sounds funny coming from an animator, but I've always done music since I was a little kid, imitating my brothers who sing and play music. And then I've always drawn, and I've always been like a person with a really weird sense of humor. So I said, well, not combine all three, and there you have it. I also there was a point I wanted to do live action film too, and then I found out very quickly you have to have other people involved to do that. So that put a roadblock on that. But I just find that animation it's the medium where you can control everything. Like in comics, you can control 80% of everything, but you don't control the soundtrack in comics. And to me, animation allows you to. You can set the tone, you can design the characters, you can, the exact voices you want. So if you're a control freak, I highly suggest getting into animation.
That's scary because I'm a bit of a control freak.
That being said, though, I think my style of animation, which is very limited, and I've been told this, that it works for what it is. And I think people that want to get in it, like if they have ideas and they want to do their own animation, can see a person like me and go, well, wait a minute, if that guy did it, I can do my, version of what everyone doesn't have to have a studio or be Disney. If you have good ideas, then they'll translate. I know that I'm that way when I see other people's sort of limited animation, which is really funny because when I see other forms of limited animation, they're always better than mine. So I think mine must be super limited. So.
How do you define limited animation? Because I mean, I'm new to it, and I don't really know like where all the lines of demarcation lie. But I mean, is there?
It's kind of like saying indie rock.
Okay.
I mean, it's like where's the was Nirvana indie?
Right.
Really, it's just I think limited means not. I'm going to use my limited vocabulary to describe limited animation. Not lot movement.
Okay.
I think not a. I mean, and then again, is Scooby-Doo, is Hanna-Barbera, was that considered limited? I don't know.
Right, because a lot of what I do and what I've been trying to figure out is I will look at, you know, Hanna-Barbera and He-Man and the early 80s cartoons, because their volume of output was so high that they had to take major shortcuts.
Yeah.
But I mean, they were hand illustrating those frames.
Yeah, and it's kind of like I like it because indie animation to me is the equivalent of what like punk rock would be to music. It's just it's the idea and the attitude and everything comes first before the technique.
Yeah.
You know, whereas I think some animation, the technique comes first, and then they go, well, oh, and we'll put an idea as well. But,
We might as well have a story since we're in here.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean that, and it's funny because like my nephew had the greatest quote when I did a film with Bill Plimpton, and you know Bill Plimpton's Bill Plimpton, like the greatest indie animator ever. And then my nephew told me, he goes, "Oh, Uncle Jimmy, it looks kind of like because he drew it in my style, kind of." He goes, "It kind of looks like your style, only real." And I was like, touche. That's actually true. Yeah. But so like the public, like I've got very good friends who tell me, I like your stuff, but it's just, you know, it's not, and they want to say real animation. I know what they mean. It's a certain style. It's like listening to music that's garage band, you know, produced. But I mean, think about it this way: if you made Citizen Kane and shot it with a video camera, it would still be pretty cool. It just wouldn't be, you know, the big 70 millimeter, you know.
Yeah, and there are some like indie films too that if you shot like Citizen Kane, they might actually lose a little bit, you know. I think there's something about the like the style of animation you do that kind of it fits the world you build. It's kind of, I don't know. I've tried to describe it to whenever I tell friends about your work or whatever. I usually like try to kind of put it like if you imagine like kind of like a Tarantino flick about Walmart. You know, it's like,
I like that. I think I always set out to make Citizen Kane, but I end up making Gummo.
Yeah.
So that's another good way of putting it, because yeah, I mean, it's in my head. It's I forget that it's limited animation, and I have these big broad ideas, and then they just come out ridiculous, but they work, and it always works. Ends up working, or I won't release it.
Yeah. I mean, I think like the nice thing about limited animation too is just on a time frame, right? Because like if you're doing, I mean, limited animation is time consuming enough, but if you had to do every in between, like if your character turns their head and like the I mean, the amount of time to draw all those frames is just insanely intense.
Yeah, my characters drink coffee like this. They don't go.
But what I think is kind of cool about that is how much you can tell within like the limits of like some keyframes, like it's really pared down, and yet you can kind of pull off a lot. And I know Cory, like with your work too, it'll be like you know, 2 frames and then kind of like in betweens filled in by After Effects, you know.
Right.
And it's like both are intense amounts of work, but it's kind of cool. I don't know. To me, it seems like such a cool way because to do animation, because it's just another reminder. There's really no cheats in creating art, like with that kind of thing. You know, it kind of reminds me of when like some comics, you know, are shorter and tell a succinct story and like are done in a really doodly, like quick style. Some are like insanely long and have like a million panel sequences to show like an action movement, and they both can be equally good. I think there's something really cool about that. Aside from like Jim, what you were mentioning, like you don't need a studio to do that. And that's kind of amazing too, because then it can be, like you were saying, like completely author controlled, you know?
Yeah, it's just art. You know, it's like any other art. I mean, animation is, or film, there's all types of different levels, all types of different genres, all types of different style. I chose to go for style out of necessity because I don't have a crew. I don't work with a crew, and I've kind of got a method that works pretty well for me. I'm pretty prolific. I mean, I have a lot of ideas, and I've got a lot of ideas done. So I've kind of stuck with the method that works for me. But I mean, my template isn't everybody else's template. Everybody's kind of has their own ways of doing things. I mean, there's an animator named Robert Valley, who's totally 100% incredible. He's just the most amazing animator. But I mean, I'm sure he doesn't work anywhere in the same method that I do. Yeah, I have kind of a really weird production method. Not weird. It's just I've simplified it over the years, you know, and it helps me to enjoy it too. That's another thing. I always tell people if they want to make films, to make sure they're having fun and that they enjoy what they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's really important because early on in my illustration, like I was trying to do something that I think I could eventually get there, but I was trying to do like painterly realism. And it was frustrating because I think I could spend the next 20 years not achieving that and never making or finishing a project. And so I actually kind of switched over to, something that comes more naturally to me, which is like black and white, like ink. And now I can finish things. And it's kind of true with animation as well. Like I'm using puppets basically. I do puppet animation, which is, I make it in Photoshop and Illustrator, and then I kind of rig it up in After Effects and just like rotate parts of it. And it's not a Disney film, but I can finish projects.
That's awesome. Hey, by the way, Cory, and maybe Josh, you can put a tag on this. There's an animator named Eric Power.
Uh-huh.
Incredible. He does cutout animation, stop motion.
Oh, cool.
He makes full length films. He's just finished his second film called Night of the Demon, or Attack of the Demon, I think.
That's incredible.
He's brilliant, super brilliant. So Eric Power, check him out. He's a friend of mine too.
Yeah, I will.
Is his website Power Up, or is that something else?
It might be Eric Power Up or something like that.
Let me see. Let's see if this is...
Yeah, you'll know it when you see it. He's done tons of music videos too.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Eric, is it ericpowerup.com?
I don't know. I know his YouTube channel is Eric Power Up.
Well, his phone number is
his home address is.
If you type in social security number 417.
So you've been doing indie animation for a long time. Or do you have some tips, like some kind of big, like whatever you do, don't do this kind of advice that you've learned along the way?
Yeah.
For like, cause like as Cory said, he's starting this out. So what are your tips of like, what do you avoid? What do you need to do first? That kind of stuff.
Try and find what you enjoy doing the most about the project and do as much of that as you can, because that will get you the momentum to finish the project. It shouldn't be a labor. It should be fun. So if, for example, if you, like me, I don't really completely enjoy the act of animating all the time, but I really enjoy character design and backstory and creating the world and the atmosphere and the music and stuff. So I focus on that, and then I get to the moving things around at the end. So I would say find the joy in it and then just capitalize on that. That'll be your fuel. What not to do is there's certain ideas that you're like, okay, down the line, I want to do this idea. but be very wary of that, because then you'll have a stockpile of ideas you never get to. So if an idea is strong enough where it keeps jumping back into your head, then you probably want to examine that. Not examine your head, but but I mean, you might want to. But yeah, so biggest thing is just to find the joy in it, and that will translate into a good story or a good film or whatever. And then I also tell people, find a work method that you can actually do. That's very important, because if you, that is literally what I mean. Because, for example, if you wanted to do After Effects animation and your computer can't handle it and you can't get another computer, you're not going to do After Effects animation, and you're not going to do anything. So find a method that works for you that you can actually complete your projects in.
Yeah.
So that's very important.
Nice.
Yeah, I like that a lot, because I think a lot of times people will not do stuff because of a series of excuses. But one of the things that's amazing about nowadays is maybe you don't have access to After Effects, but you've got a smartphone, or whatever. Like there are so many different ways to animate nowadays. That waiting for the money or the tools or the XYZ to be able to do it is really just an excuse at this point.
There's a thing on here on your cell phone. I have an ancient iPhone, but the voice recorder on it's amazing, and I've had a lot of my friends do voices for me and just have them record them on their phones and send them to me. And in the film that is in theaters, the movie Revengeance, the one that played in giant theaters, there's several voices on there that were recorded on an iPhone, and you can't tell. So unless you go see it and go, that's right there, that's where he did it, I can tell. But
there's some audio engineer out there who's just like, I know the spot.
Yeah, dear Jim Lujan, you are bullshit. So, but yeah, I mean, whatever works. And that's kind of always been my approach to the animation too. It's like,
Yeah, and I think this is something we definitely share a lot on here. I think one of our biggest pet peeves is people who claim wanting to do something and don't do it. Because we've all, and part of why I think it's such a pet peeve I'll speak for everybody and say of everybody on here, it's because we've all been there and all had that moment of like, oh, when I learn this thing, then I'll do this. And then found ourselves later on having not done it. So it's like it comes from a good place, but it's definitely one of those things like you're not doing yourself any favors waiting until you get the right pen to start whatever your project is as an artist, because and these things take a long time. So if you don't start, how's that time gonna just appear,
And with all the technology, like I was talking to my friend George Lucas the other day, and I was telling him, George, you remember the 90s, and just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do it. So there's a million tricks out there with all the different programs and everything that are out there. Oh, that's neat. And it's cool for, you want to mess around with it like some kind of, face app or something. That's fun. But remember, you're going to show your stuff to people. What are people going to respond to? So that's kind of that's another thing to keep in mind. Just always picture yourself playing your stuff in front of a group or an audience, and how will you feel about it when you're doing that? That's another motivating factor. By the way, that is really, who is drawing that? The box is right there. Is it cubicles?
Oh, that's Josh, of course. Yeah.
Josh, you show off.
I'm working on some chairs. It's a annoying crowd scene. These are the things that frighten me about animation, because when I'm working on my own comics, I'm like, I know what I'll do. I'll do a big audience scene for like one panel on a page. And
I'm going to share something with you. Keep talking. I'm going to grab it. This is perfect for this conversation. I'll be right back.
So, and Josh, when you do stuff,
I was going to transition to talking about Jim's strange powers of doing amazing background characters, but
what I was going to say is like when you say I'm going to do a big crowd scene in comics, you've got to draw that. But I'm looking at that and I would be like, oh, okay, so I would make 3 different characters and then I would offset their animation so that they don't sync up, and then separate that out, them out in Z space, and all of a sudden you have this crowd, but I've got 40 people in the crowd, but I drew 3 of them.
I love that. That's exactly what. Yep, I'm going to show you some right now. I love drawing crowd scenes, and what I did, and I still do, continue to do. This is kind of a sort of an example of it, but I will. This is not a guy from a crowd scene. This is a character, but I will draw a series of just characters and color them in Photoshop, and sometimes duplicate them and then change the colors and put a beard on somebody or a hat on somebody. And of course, I grabbed like the 2 of the 10,000 sketchbooks I have. They don't have a good example for crowds, but like I'll have a page of, I call them peeps. I have a folder on my computer called peeps, and it's just like a bunch of little drawings of people all over. This is back when I used the sketchbook. I use technology now, which is the iPad. Maybe I'll find someone here. But that is one of my favorites. That is a relaxing, no-brain activity for me to do, is just to draw background characters and then reuse them in different films.
Do you ever throw in like little Easter eggs, like characters from other shorts in it? Like
yes, Kevin Cross. I'll put Kevin Cross in
really?
in the background. Yes, he knows that.
I was gonna say like I'm glad you brought up crowd scenes though, because like I'm even thinking, and now I'm forgetting the name of the short, but the one that's about the I can't say what it's about because that would give away the big reveal.
You can tell
the creepy broadcaster guy?
The lizard people cartoon.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So maybe giving it away. Okay. Yeah. But the lizard people one has some sequences of like a posh kind of party, and some of the character work you did on just the background characters in those scenes it is pretty incredible, because you're pretty good at like coming up with interesting costumes too for the people. Like
exactly, and it's funny because I'm looking at that right now. I'm trying to open it. Exactly what I mentioned earlier about finding the joy in something. Yeah. I enjoy creating characters, and that was such a fun thing to do, to create all those weird characters in the background. Here we go. And I think this one has an example of some people in the background here. Yeah, by the way, the film's called Infinity Pool.
That's it. And
it will be available very soon. I'm going to release it for free. It's on Vimeo now, pay only. But around the year anniversary, which is coming up fairly soon, I'm going to release it for free on YouTube, and everyone in the world can see it. Okay, here's a good example here. All right, so if you can see, this is from Infinity Pool. These are some characters that are in the background. They don't move. They might wiggle a little bit like this. There's my animation. But like I've over months and months, and I have characters I designed like this from other films that I'll import into different films. It really, to me, I'll tell you, there's a film called The Triplets of Belleville. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my favorite animated films. And if you look at the design on that, the characters in the background are designed just as well as the characters in the foreground. And to me, that is like, that's remarkable. That's, to me, that it's just like eye candy to look at. And I wanted to do something. I like doing stuff like that. I don't like, for my own stuff, I don't like throw away, like stick figures in the background, or just scratchy characters in the background. I like that sense of detail. And for me, it's a necessity, because I don't animate on the ones, and I don't animate, full walk cycles, and I that other stuff is the stuff that carries the films. But thank you for sticking with me for half an hour while I looked for that. So. It was worth it.
Yeah. So okay. So like with limited animation, what kind of planning stages do you go through? Like, how do you map out a project? I've seen a little bit of it, but like, what's your kind of process? Do you start with like scripts? Do you start with like storyboards? Like, how do you kind of work out like what you're gonna do, so you don't end up like kind of spending a bunch of time later on that's unnecessary?
Here's a good example. This is a storyboard for a cartoon. I don't know if I've ever did this one or not, but this is my version of storyboards. Thumbnails. So I've used thumbnails. I've storyboarded stuff. I've even written scripts before. I've tried it every different way, including just making stuff up on the fly as I went along. I kind of like that, actually. It just depends on the situation. If I'm working with other people, I'll storyboard something and write a little bit of a script. But if I'm working by myself, sometimes I do not storyboard. With the iPad, working on the iPad now has changed everything a lot, because now what I'll do is I'll design a shot real, scratchy, like a thumbnail, but full size. And then with the layers features on that, I turn the opacity down really low, and then I draw on different layers, and I draw the final art. So that's been really great. But for the most part, like this is a script for me right now.
So do you do, I'm guessing no, but do you do animatics?
No, my animation is kind of an animatic itself.
Okay. Okay.
No, I tried that one time, and I was like, what the hell am I doing? I was like, this is like looking just a step below my regular animation. What's going on here? And I've seen animatics from people that I look at and I go, man, you spent a lot of brain power on that animatic. Like, that's almost like a film right there. You could have released that on its own. But and I guess if there's a lot of people involved, it's easier to do stuff like that. But since I do everything, all the animation myself, I'm very I work smarter, not harder.
See, I wonder how much of that comes with experience, because every time I skip a step, I end up taking way longer. Like I think, okay, I can skip storyboards, or I could skip an animatic or whatever, and then I end up having to like redraw the character from scratch because I didn't think through like the different layers and things correctly, or whatever. And so, but I'm doing this this character now, and as I was drawing it, I knew what to avoid and what to do, because I had already run into those problems several times in the last one that I did.
That is a very cool storyboard right there. It's very, like, you can tell the feel of the animation within that. That's like a real animated storyboard right there.
Yeah, this is one that I did with Scott. Actually, Scott hired me for a project, and instead of normally what I end up doing is I make a lot of hand gestures and noises that aren't words to try to describe movement, and that usually doesn't communicate what I want to my collaborators. And so I end up having to do stuff like this. So because the stuff where I'm like, it goes like, and then they're like,
"What?" Finish animation, Cory?
Yeah, I've got the finish on here.
I mean, it came out really good. He learned how to do this technique kind of on the fly. You'll have to explain a little bit how you do. Oh, here we go.
Wow.
Is it this one? I don't know which. This is really showing my organizational skills, because I do not. I'm not very organized. I think this is the most recent version.
Wow, that is great.
Thanks. And this is cool because Scott drew this character, like designed the character, and then like my least favorite part is what I'm doing right now, which is like I'm gonna break this thing up into pieces. I was like, Scott, break this thing up into pieces, and I'll make it move.
Is that After Effects?
Yeah, it's After Effects, and I'm using rubber hose for the arms, and then joysticks and sliders for a lot of everything else. Like whenever there's like a turn on the body of the wheel.
Is rubber hose like a part of After Effects, or is that a different program?
Those are plugins that they're like aftermarket plugins that make After Effects do stuff that it doesn't do. So
rubber hose.
Yeah, so rubber hose is like the noodle arms.
Yeah.
It's like that, except you can do it to anything. So After Effects is pretty limited in that it has, you can make a stroke, but if you wanted that stroke to have like shirt sleeves and or whatever, that's really limited. But with rubber hose, I can be like, I want this piece of illustration that I've done to articulate, and so normally I would have to go in and like move the hand, then move the elbow, then move the shoulder, and then whatever. But if I use rubber hose, I can connect all those things so that I can just grab the hand and move it to where I want it to be, and the forearm and upper arm and shoulder and torso follow it. And so it makes it a lot faster. Cool. My whole life is based on trying to automate the stuff I hate, and I hate like the nitpicky things. Ironically, I spend 80% of my time figuring out how the nitpicky things work so that I can eliminate them, and then I just find more nitpicky things. So I don't know if it's a good game plan, but it's kind of like how my brain works.
That's awesome. I use a program called Neighborhood Hose in mine. So, they come by everywhere.
That's funny.
Yeah. Took me a minute.
Well, I was trying to think. Have I heard of that program before?
I was trying to think. Should I even say that out loud? And I did.
This is what I gave Scott. Like I don't know. I think I sometimes I end up doing way more work than I need to. But then at the end, after I rig these characters like insanely more than they need to be rigged, I can do anything I want with them. And so I'm kind of like building a library of puppets that I'm hoping that I'll be able to like reuse these characters over and over again. And
see, I'm a little bit jealous because like you can put all that stuff together in a making of.
Yeah,
it's really interesting.
We're actually going to do a video. The client is, they're paying extra to have a video of the process. So
oh my God! If I did a making of and people would watch it and go, "What the hell?" I'm more confused now than when we started.
Yeah,
that's incredible.
Like this is an interesting one. Josh and I did one together. Are you cool, Josh? If I show?
Yeah, dude. I don't care.
So this is the animatic that I did to work with. Oh, come on. Yeah, play with that. That's what I want you to do. So, dang it, sound in my headphones.
Is this about Dick Gregory?
Yeah.
Wow. See, that looks great.
Yeah. So this is my animatic to show Josh what I wanted him to draw.
Holy mackerel, man!
And then let me show you the finished one.
What's that done in?
We can't talk over it, or else we can't see it though. That's the only thing.
What's that? Oh, I have to keep talking. I'm sorry. So
talk, no one else can talk.
Gotcha. So basically, what this is me. I don't know. I'm just gonna make random noises so that it plays through. But this is me. I did most of this in Photoshop, and then I just brought the layers into After Effects and did some quick camera movements. And a lot of this is just me figuring out how the heck any of this moves. Like this police guy, for example, I needed him built in a very specific way so that I could do his arms and legs and things like that. So let me show you where's the finished one? Is it in here?
What's cool about this, before you play it, I just realized that we all have a part in this. There's stuff that I designed that's been animated, because I thought Josh and I were like, well, we don't do animation, but at least we provided some of the artwork for it. So
yeah. So this is the final animation that I did, and I mean, really, most of it was working because the animatic was the way that I wanted it, and then Josh was able to illustrate all of the layers. And I actually realized something where if I don't, in my mind, I was like, oh, he'll know what I mean, and so I didn't end up doing the exact thing that I wanted, thinking that Josh would just know, and I learned that that's not true. So
yeah, I love that. That looks so. See, I would love to see a movie or a short film like that. That looks like that.
Yeah,
That
that's
looks
actually
so good.
that's actually my goal is, and that's kind of what I wanted to pick your brain about. Is I have all this stuff, and I've got to the point now where I think I'm okay with the quality that I can produce. Like, I'm not happy with it, and I don't think I ever will be. But it's at a standard that I'm okay with doing. And now I don't know what to do. So now I'm like, what's up with the festival circuit? Like, where does all this stuff go? Like, what do you do with any of this?
Check out Film Freeway. I don't know if
Okay.
it's .com, but or if it's just an app, or I think it's a website. But it has a listing of all the festivals. You can upload your films there and send them digitally. You know, people can, you can submit for multiple festivals all over the place through that Film Freeway.
Film Freeway, okay.
Yeah.
Because I was looking at like Without a Box for a while.
I used to use that. I think Film Freeway is designed a little bit better, a little bit more streamlined, easier to use. That would be like the biggest suggestion. Yeah, because it's like, that's the other thing. We all create stuff. It's funny. YouTube for me has been like the ultimate film festival or way to get eyeballs on stuff. I just got contacted from a guy in New Jersey who's teaches animation, and his class. I'm like a subject in their class this summer.
Oh, that's cool.
Really, yeah, it's really cool. Mental illness or something. I don't know.
It's what is that? Abnormal psychology.
Yeah, he just didn't tell me. But stuff like that. I mean, man, you guys definitely should do something with that. When I saw the animatic, I was like, that is so cool. And then when I saw the close up that Josh drew of Dick Gregory, right, I'm like, oh no, this is going to be on another level. And then now, after I've watched it, now I'm like re-examining my life, because that's.
Well, this is the first thing that I animated ever.
Wow.
And I'm
crazy.
But I learned a lot, and then I've actually, a couple weeks ago, I started re-rigging it. So the controls that you see in the lower right and the lower left, that's joysticks and sliders, so that I can actually go in and, like, if I wanted to focus the lens, I can just move this and it focuses it. But I've rigged a bunch of different pieces of this so that I only have to move one controller, and it does a ton of stuff. So you'll see like this, like, moves in, but if I like move it down to the other side, then it goes out or whatever. And so you can kind of see, and this is the, I don't know what to call this, thorax butt thing, right?
Yeah.
I've labeled it because I'm 12, but I can have it bend, in or out. But anyway, I've gotten to the point now where I'm proficient enough that I'm comfortable making stuff. And now I don't know anything about the industry. I don't know anything about, like, I want to make short films, but I don't know why people do that. I just want to do it because I enjoy it. But
that's like, really it.
But I mean, is there a market for it? Is there an inroad to something else? Like, what are the point of festivals? Like, I don't know any of that stuff.
It really is comparable to music, because you're like, I like writing songs, I like recording my songs, but what am I going to do with them? I could put them on Spotify, but or I could put them on iTunes. Or who's going to buy them? Or you could make $1 million.
Mm-hmm.
It just depends. One circumstance usually can lead to another. I always tell people, the more eyeballs that you can get to see your stuff, the better, because then a really good scenario could happen. But it's just ultimately comes down to why are you doing it? And if you're doing it because you have to, like me, then you'll be happy once you do it and it's done. And then you could slack off like me and not promote it and move on to the next thing, that is my biggest sin. But again, it's just what you want out of it. If it's if you get your stuff out there, you will definitely get people contacting you to do videos or commercial work.
Yeah.
I still do get people contacting me for that, but it's like, that's not what I want,
Right.
I'm really so against money. So, but
yeah. And that's interesting because I mean, that's happening right now. And I'm in that same thing where I'm kind of like Josh. I've got a day job. I do the stuff in the evenings because it's fulfilling, and there's always that temptation to like accept money as a validation of the thing I'm doing instead of like the thing being validating in and of itself. But like sometimes the money is so much that you're like, I'm going to take it because then I can pay off my car, or whatever. But anyway, that's a whole new thing. I mean, if it's illustration, if it's photography, if it's like business video or graphic design, like I know how much to charge for those things. But with animation, I'm like, I don't know. Like, what do people charge? And then you do some research and stuff, and the range is like somewhere between $500 and $15,000. $500 and $15,000, and you're like, well, that's not terribly helpful.
I have a friend, Paul, that does animation, and he did a music video, and the guy was really nice and really a good client, but it just wiped Paul out. He was so tired afterwards, and then the guy came back and said, I want to do another one. And Paul had just finished it and was like telling me, oh, there's no way I could do another music video ever again. That's it. And then so the guy offered him, and so Paul just said a ridiculous amount. Like he just threw it out, and they ended up doing it. He accepted it. Paul's like, now I have to do the music video. And I know, yeah. I mean,
that's a good tip, dude. Because like I've done that quite a few times with client work where they'll be like, hey, can you do an illustration for us? And I'm like, I am not in the mood to do more work. I've already got a day job doing that. I don't need the work. But then I'll quote them like something that's like, what would be the one thing that like would make me do this? That's what I'll quote them. And there've been not all the time, but there've been occasional times where they're like, sure. And then you're like, well, okay, I guess I have to, Yeah. But I was going to say to Cory, like, part of why we were doing the clam meetups and stuff, I got to clarify that's an M in that word.
Yeah, Grandmaster Josh, go ahead.
So Grandmaster Dragon Wizard.
Yeah, I'm going to have to put this back on screen share so people can see my ACLU shirt and I'm okay again. But the catch to like why we were all kind of drawn to hanging out with each other and stuff was we're the type of people who want to be doing completely create our own stuff and not necessarily just shilling for like some guy with $1. So I kind of have a question regarding like, okay, so your latest project, right? It's about a Brevian hip hop band.
Yes.
And okay, so one thing I was curious about, because I do music too, and like I am kind of like Cory's been trying to kind of coax me into joining him on a project and stuff. And what I've been trying to figure out is like, do you track like with that, for instance, with the Brevian band, did you come up with the Brevian hip hop songs before the animation? Like, do you do your audio sometimes before you animate, or do you do your animations before you do audio?
No. Well, for that particular one, I had the music track. That's about 3 years old. I did that a long time ago, and I was always intended to use it in a film. I didn't know what context. I didn't know it was going to be in another language. But once I started doing this, once I had the idea to do this series, it's called All That Glitters, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought, oh, this fits perfectly in there, and I don't know which came first. I for sure know that song, the music was old. It was first before anything, and then just in my head, it just fit. Like, oh, I could picture, a Brett Vian rap song to this. It would be their perfect signature song, and that's the other thing. With me, I don't know if other creators do this, but with me, majority of the time, the music drives the mood of the film. And I can only speak in analogies, as my friends know, and make fun of me. But if I was writing Saturday Night Fever, I would have recorded all the music first and then went, hey, I'll make a movie to fit these songs. That's kind of how I like to think sometimes. So I had the music for this project, and it kind of guided where it went a little bit. But also, I'm doing music for this that is being made on the fly for it too. So to answer your question, I don't know.
So you kind of do both, but it is interesting because it definitely is pretty clear that like music drives your work. I'm gonna once again butcher this and blank out, but the Devo-esque band from like what was the name?
The Swizzle Stick Army.
Yeah, the Swizzle Stick Army.
They're more like Kraftwerk.
Yeah, they're much more German. But yeah, that is one of those animations you've done where it's like watching the animation. It's totally driven by the music, but it's just such a good bit. I don't know. So with All That Glitters, is that completely scripted out? Do you have like a map for it, or are you kind of doing it on the fly?
There's a script right there.
Nice.
No, not well. Okay, I know where it's ending, and I know right now I'm as we speak, as we record this today, I'm finished the art for episodes up to 16. So I have 15, 16 done, but that aren't aired yet. And I have the voices recorded for most of them, and then I'm starting the art on 17. I know what happened. I know what happens in 17. I know what happens in 18, and I know what happens in 19. But I don't have it written down. Like this happens, and I don't storyboard it out.
Yeah,
but I know where it's going. So, and it's been like that the whole way through. I knew, I know what episode 1 was going to be, and I know what episode 20, which is the last episode, is going to be, and I know what happens in between. And it was just a matter of placing certain things in certain episodes and pacing it. That's another thing too, because I noticed when I've watched it, I would think to myself, you know what, a faster paced episode would really work right about now.
Yeah.
And so I have the luxury to do that too. But there's certain key points that have to happen along the way, and so that's kind of how I've approached this. But no scripts, no storyboards, no stems, no seeds. So.
That's awesome, though. So how do you avoid the pitfall of just kind of ending up in like a hole?
I'm sorry, excuse me.
I think you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Are we going back to the software he was mentioning before?
Yes, I get that. Oh boy. Yeah. Well, just because I know where it's going, that I will avoid that. What does happen is, let's say I have a story point that I want to happen, and again, these episodes are only 2.5 minutes long. That's the big challenge. But if I want 5 things to happen in the next episode, I've only got 2, maybe 3 minutes to work in. That becomes a challenge. And then you have to knock, oh, this didn't get to happen here. And then either you have to cut it or bump it to another episode. Kind of the escape or the cheat that I've allowed myself with All That Glitters is some of it's a little bit less linear. Like there'll be news clips or concert clips or whatever that I could kind of play them anywhere in the episode and they fit. So I kind of give myself that out a little bit, but it is a story that happens along a timeline. So, and editing, I guess, would be the best way to avoid falling into a hole.
Yeah.
Just getting rid of things that don't fit. And the good thing is I don't have that much time to work on it all the time, so I'm not precious with it. I just got to keep moving along, get this one done, and and charge my patrons all the time, which I don't do, by the way. So once you become my patron, I don't charge every month. So
where can people go to kind of add to your Patreon?
Jim Lujan on Patreon. Yeah. For as little as $1 a month, you can keep me fed and clothed. I don't charge my patrons every month. I'm jealous of people that set it up for monthly. I should have done that at the beginning, but at the same time, it's kind of cool because it's like, the patrons that are on my Patreon really are there just to support. They don't. I don't send a ton of rewards and stuff all the time, but then I don't charge everybody all the time. So what do you want?
I still need to set up a Patreon. I'm still hesitant because I keep fearing being the guy who's getting $1.
Yeah, I was that guy for a while.
Huh. Well,
it happens. It takes time. Our mutual friend Lonnie Millsap, he was in that same boat. He was afraid to set it up at first because he only had a few patrons at first, and he's like, "Oh man, this is." But he's built his way up, and I was the same way. I had a couple of relatives on there, and then over time it builds up a little bit. But it's another thing too with Patreon. It's not even about this sounds corny, but it's not about the money, because it's not, because I don't make that much. It's more about building like building a community, I guess, around the work a little bit. So that's been really valuable too. Yeah,
and I think that's kind of cool to give people an outlet. Like if there are, I think most of us have people who support us and have supported us for a while and are looking for outlets to kind of support creators. And so that's nice too, for that extent. But I do need to overcome that fear, especially when I'm done with this. I think I have 3 pages after this. And I know that if I have no Patreon to send people to, that's kind of silly at that point. My main thing, and I know Scott has a similar thing, but it's I need to figure out what I'd offer people.
Two things. One is don't wait to do a Patreon, because the people that are going to support you on it will support you no matter what, even if you're between projects. That's one thing. I mean, that you'll have your core following of people that will support you, that just support you because they like you. I mean, I'm not going to support you, but
Yeah, of course.
No, I mean, people like me, that are just I'll support this guy. I like the work he's doing, and it's not because of a specific project. And the other thing is about the rewards. It's kind of I don't know, maybe if this is accurate or not, but I don't think it's about the rewards. And I'm only going by how I feel when I support another artist. I don't support them. The rewards are the last thing on my mind. I support a show on Patreon, a podcast called Comic Lab. Dave Kellett and Brad Geiger, and I love that show, and I've listened to those guys for years. And I support them because I like the work they're doing. Now they give early access to their shows, which to me is that's a really cool reward, but it's not a thing I'm getting. You know what I mean? It's not I want that print or send me that calendar or whatever.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So make it easy on yourself if you do a thing, or be like me and just do nothing. Just just have it there and just say, "Hey guys, I'm sorry I didn't give you anything free this month, but thanks. But here's another cartoon." I give early access. That's what I give. I do what Comic Lab does.
And you can set it up so that it's per project, right?
That's how mine's set up. It's set up per project, but when I post something, for example, the last 2 months, I haven't charged patrons. But when I post something, it gives you the option if you want to charge or not for it. And that's kind of like where I go, should I or should I not? You know, and I don't a lot of times. Once in a while I do. But when I need money for meth or whatever, I usually charge people. But other than that, I'm not, you know, I leave them alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Papa needs his meth.
I'll break into their house if I need anything. So.
No, that's really I think that's good, and I think that'll ring true to like the people who follow us too, because I think most of our core base is all like aspiring or current like cartoonists, and so I think just to hear that kind of is very encouraging. So Cory, do you have any like crazy stuff regarding animation, like layering? To me, I'm kind of curious with limited animation for both of you guys, like what how you decide what your keyframes are, and how do you decide like between, because like even though like Jim, your animation's super limited, but it works, it flows, and it still like creates the semblance of movement. And like I don't get hung up on like the limited nature of the animation when I'm watching it. So how do you decide on like what needs to have movement and what doesn't? Do you have like some like kind of self-imposed rules with that, or is it just kind of a feeling thing?
How
Does
dare
that make sense when I asked?
How dare you call my animation limited? Cory, I'm curious to what your answer is.
I think it's very similar to comics. You know, except in some ways it's easier, in some ways it's more time consuming. But like in real life, you look around your surroundings and you will fixate on things, and then there are other things that are in the peripheral. And so I use kind of that peripheral concept to allude to the idea of life. And so there'll be some motion going on in the background and then the surroundings, but the major key points, that's what you're going to draw in a panel. That's what you're going to draw, you know, like without that thing, you know, the logic of the scene falls apart. I don't know what's going on. And so that's going to be the big or major, you know, movement. And so, I mean, as far as like keyframes, I just try to think like either what is the most efficient or what is the most powerful way to tell this part of the story, you know, and I like stuff with no dialogue. That's kind of what I like doing. And so I kind of like doing silent films, but like if there's something in there that is going to convey the idea that needs to be conveyed, then I just need, then beyond that, it's just shot selection. And then how do I set that up? And then how does it pay off? And so everything you can take the whole film in 3 acts, or you can take like that scene or that movement or that thing, like you've got to set it up before you can knock it down. And so I take it from like a really kind of brutal standpoint, because I hate the amount of time that things take. And so if something is just like visual masturbation and it doesn't actually like sell a salient point in the story, I cut it, or I, you know, no matter how fun it'll be, I try to get rid of that thing. And that kind of whittles it down to like the bare bones of what needs to be there. And if that makes sense, then I'll animate it from there. I think that's probably why when I skip storyboards and animatic, I run into issues, because, you know, I'll spend 3 days animating something that doesn't matter. And then I'm like, oh, well, that was cool, but it doesn't fit the story. And now I'm like half a week behind.
Yeah.
I spent 20 years animating things that don't matter.
Yeah. Well, I do have the other side of it, where I just, my goal is for people to look at it and go, what on earth just happened? Like, so if I'm trying to tell a story, then listen to everything I just said. If I'm trying to weird people out, yeah, that's a whole different ball of wax.
what about you? What about you, Jim? What do you think?
Please, can you repeat the question?
So basically, how do you decide like what you're going to animate and like what you're not, like, meaning like what frames you're going to draw so that you're kind of creating enough movement? And actually, I think this does touch on something like Cory doesn't do or hasn't delved in heavily into like syncing like mouth movements.
Yeah.
And it's like with your animations, you'll do like 3 mouths. Like I can tell it's like just 3 mouths.
You're giving me more credit. You're giving me one mouth more credit than I actually use.
But what's impressive is the timing and the expression that you choose. It works. It works really well, and it's. I'm often just like thinking that's it's like being impressed by like a joke that's told in 2 lines. Like it's just. It takes a lot of craft to do. So is that a gut instinct thing? Like how have you kind of figured that out? Like,
yeah, I think it's timing over the years. You get better at editing and timing and pacing and like I mean for years I just used one mouth, like open, close, open, close, open, close. And now to be honest, now I use 2, open, and then I use an O. But it's timing. It's kind of listening to the track and then timing the O's and the closing and openings, and it's kind of like you fool the brain, you know. And again, editing is really big because if you notice on my stuff, the further you go back, the longer I would stay on shots.
Yeah.
And then I realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm not using that much animation. So you got to like edit a little bit tighter and keep things moving and keep it interesting. But it's just really is just a matter of over the years, just learning timing and a feel for it. Yeah. Like you said, like the gut thing for what works with the mouths. I've seen animation that they don't use any lip sync, and I mean, not to simplify it too much, but it really is whatever works. It's like for what your project, if you're showing it to people, and if there's things in it that when you're creating it that really matter to you, but people don't care, then you have to kind of weigh that. Is it really worth it? You know, it matters to me, but it doesn't matter to them. I think it's like that. You know what? It's like that with comics too.
Yeah.
You know, if people really, you're drawing a car and you're spending an hour and a half drawing the hubcaps, people comment and they, hey man, I really love your hubcaps, you know, then it's worth it. Or maybe you just enjoy drawing hubcaps. Josh, I'm just trying to talk about hubcaps right now to you. This is what this is all about.
I'll stop drawing hubcaps. The reason I kind of brought that up is actually like, I really struggled with that when I first started doing comics, where I would show somebody, I think it's a pretty like early to visual storytelling mistake, but I would show, like, if I had somebody like leave a room, I'd show them like open and close the door, and then like their first step and their next step, which can work really well for pacing, but people aren't dumb, and yet I'd kind of assume the worst and be like, I have to show everything. It's like that common mistake of like somebody's gonna get in a car, so now I have to show them like walk into the car and show every beat of that movement, which of course makes it really awkward and I mean a little difficult to read. So like I was just kind of curious like how you guys decided to pare it down, because like for me that's still something I consciously, like when I'm thumbnailing, I'll be like, oh wait, I don't need to show that. Like I don't need to show every beat of this. And then there's times where I'll have it move way too fast and have to kind of be like, no, I actually do have to show that, like the walks to the car and stuff.
Cory used the term visual masturbation earlier.
Yeah.
Also a really great band name. That's that happens a lot. And it happens in comics. It happens in animation where people are kind of like, I don't know if it's self-indulgent or not, but they're kind of feel the need to like show. I got to show the key turning every time. I got to show the foot on the pedal. Sometimes it works, but not always. But people get a little carried away with stuff like that too. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes, but again, it's just whatever serves the story. And again, it's whatever. If you're showing it for an audience, pay attention to what they like and what they don't like, because that's what ultimately matters.
Cool. Okay, so how do you kind of run a pitch? That's a curiosity of mine, because you're pretty good at selling your work, and I don't mean like selling it, like physically selling it. It's just you're good at condensing and explaining like what your project is and what it's about and stuff like that. So how do you kind of refine your pitch? Do you have like a go-to person? Like, do you call up Lonnie and just go like, "Hey, dude, like, does this work?"
Yeah, Lonnie's like, "Jim, it's 3 a.m., man." No, it's funny because normally I'll tell my friends after I've done it. I say, "What do you think?" "Oh, too late. It's done. Sorry." I think it's just whatever I'm excited about the project, and they can tell it's genuine. So if it's something like San Giorno Must Die, I'll talk about how he's kind of like a Giorgio Moroder, or he's kind of like a club guy, and he's filled with gangsters, and there's cocaine, and there's violence, and Euro disco. Those things are like things that I think are really entertaining and fun. Yes, kids, I just said cocaine is entertaining and fun. I'm sorry, erase that part. But so it's the excitement. That part of it is the pitch. But as far as like, I guess I have pitched stuff where I've told friends like, "Here's my idea," or "What do you think of this?" But I'm terrible at listening to advice sometimes, though. It's kind of, I'll end up doing whatever I am motivated to do. So ultimately, it's because I'm the one doing the work. Ultimately, I'll just do whatever is interesting to me. But that's for the most part. And how about you, Cory? What how have you?
I don't know. I mean, I come from a school of thought kind of shaped by Brian McDonald's storytelling books, like Ink, Invisible Ink, and stuff like that. So I try to pitch it based on like what it's about, because I'm starting to do a lot of stuff that's like got some sort of subversive political message, or some like the not this next one that I'm doing, but the one after that is about like government surveillance. The one I'm doing right now is about like the inequality in the distribution of creative work, how the creators of the idea and the work are getting screwed, but the distribution machine is making all the money. And so I kind of sell it through like high concept, and then at the end when people are like, "Oh, that sounds cool," I'm like, "Yeah, and I'm doing it with like insects," and they're like, "Wait, what?" So I don't know that I've really nailed it. I mean, I've never sold an animation or gotten it into anything because I'm fairly new to it. So
It's you know what? Again, it's whatever works. If your end product connects with people, then like my dad used to say, figure out how to do something, and then you could write a book on it, and other people will buy that book.
Yeah.
And my dad he's a serial killer, by the way. So
yeah, and that's actually the definition of my YouTube channel is, hey, I figured out how to do something yesterday, so here's how to do that.
Oh, really? That's awesome. I was really big when I first started. Gosh, not even when I first started. Up until a few years ago, I was really big on process videos and things like that. Like I loved watching, and I still do love watching people's processes.
Yeah.
I noticed that there's a danger in overall in being consumed with the process and not finishing the projects.
Yeah.
So like I said, it's a blessing and a curse that I've got limited time to work on stuff. I don't have all day because, I mean, I do work as well. But that time that I do work on stuff is very concentrated. So I don't play video games for the most part. I don't really. And I don't watch a lot of TV, which is it's something I should be proud to say. I know my parents as a kid would have been proud of me, an adult, to say that, but I just don't because I don't have that much time. And I'm one of those guys that has 1,000 things on my Netflix menu, and I surf for 30 minutes and then go, oh yeah, I gotta go, and I don't watch anything. But that's because I'm creating stuff. So that sounds really badass to say, by the way. But I'm creating. I don't have time to watch. I'm creating it.
Along those lines, another danger of process, because I love process videos. But show me a kid who just bought a drone, and I'll tell you what his next 6 short films will look like. Right? It's like you fall in love with this gimmick or this technique or this whatever, and then you try to shoehorn that thing into the thing that you're making because you just learned it. And it's like, but does that serve the story?
Right.
Or are you building a story around a trick?
If this was church, I would say, preach it, brother. Because it's true. And you can tell when somebody, the same thing with a program, they get a new program and they'll use, like I think when the lens flare was first discovered by myself, holy man, I would call me J.J. Abrams Luhan because I was all over that thing. Lens, and then people would make fun, like friends would make jokes. Oh, nice lens flare, Jim, and I didn't get it. I'd be like, yeah, it's cool. But then I realized, okay, they mean it because it's gimmicky. But yeah, sometimes gimmicks are cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think things exist in a vacuum. I mean, there's a time and place where, well, you look at like Michael Bay, that shot that he does when other filmmakers use kind of the tracking movement that goes counter to the camera movement with layers of depth, it works really, really well because they're using it at a salient point in the story. They're using it because that's the climax of that battle, or that is the important moment for that character arc. And then Michael Bay sees that and he's like, I'm going to do 90 minutes of that shot. And it's like, well, yes, that's wonderful. And it seems to draw some crowds occasionally, but
was he the first one to use that shot of the group, or was it The Right Stuff? The group walking in slow motion towards the camera?
Oh, I'm not sure.
That's been used quite a bit.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the SNL bit that was cool guys walking away from explosions?
Explosions, yeah, that too. Yeah.
That's in the. Have you guys seen other guys?
Yeah. Yes.
I think the best thing that's ever been put to film is the explosion that happens behind them and their literal reality reaction to it.
Yeah.
Where they're just sitting there screaming and their ears are bleeding and they're like, I call BS on Hollywood. There's no way.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Oh man. I think we should just, for the rest of this show, just quote movies we like. That's always good content. But yeah, no, I agree. Like I think there are times and places where anything could be appropriate. It could, and there's not necessarily a right choice because there's a number of choices, and I mean a lot of filmmakers and comic book artists and whomever are differentiated by the choice that they make, their kind of go-to bag of tricks, and the expertise is just kind of more so in when to employ those different things. But there's definitely some wrong ways to do that stuff, and just that's my thing is if I get super excited about something and then I catch myself like, well, why are you using that? Are you using that because you just got really excited about that, or because that's the thing that this character needs to do, or that's the thing that this scene needs, to sell it or whatever. So you kind of check yourself that way. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
What are we talking about? I feel like I'm rambling here.
So okay, so if you guys like Jim, how do you kind of pick what your next project is because of the fact that you have like a billion projects, and you don't want to pick something you're too precious?
Well, my next project's gonna have dog fights in it for sure.
We don't have the mute button. Oh wait, we do. I'm gonna mute.
Don't worry about them. Dogs will be dogs. Hey, dog. Scott, not the belt. Scott, no. Not the wire hangers. Scott.
Oh. So
That's the highlight.
might have the ASPCA called against you pretty soon.
Okay, I don't know if this happens to you guys. Please testify if it does, but I'm very guilty of, this goes right into the next project thing. I'm very guilty of, I get 75%, 70% done with a project, almost done with it, and then the next project starts bleeding into my mind, and I start thinking about the next project, and I got to finish this one, but I'm waiting to get into this one. And that's a big reason why I've been guilty about not promoting things, because I don't create a project, stop, promote it for a while, and then go, what's my next thing? I just go like, it's just a chain, you know?
I'm guilty of that. I'm also guilty of like sharing things while I'm working on them, which I should be, because
We all do.
there's so much content there. You know, I'm like the opposite. Like everyone's like, you know, oh, I'm spending too much time on social media, but I'm like, man, I really need to stop and like push stuff out there, you know, and remember like, oh, take a screenshot of this while I'm at this point in the production of it. And I just forget, because I just get into it and I just keep going.
I'm big on going, like I'll write down ideas and things like that and have ideas. I'm very good about going back and mining my own sketchbooks and ideas for material, and including if my dozens of fans out there, my dozen fans out there, I'm sorry, if you could go back and look at, oh, this is my favorite one that you've done, or this is my favorite one, I guarantee you that idea was probably like 3 or 4 years old, just sitting in a sketchbook, and including the next thing I'm going to work on, the next thing after that are probably thought of a year ago or something. So it's very rare that I sit down and go, okay, I'm going to come up with something brand new and do it right now. Because, and I think what could be said to that is, because those ideas were good enough or important enough for me to write down or draw sketches of or save, that they were good enough to exist, you know, later on. So they kind of proved themselves over time, like, oh, this is still a good idea. Or I'm kidding myself. One of the two.
Yeah, I struggle with that a lot. Like for instance, I have like 3 pages left on this project I put like years into.
Are you really that close to the finish line?
Yeah. I mean, like,
just scrap it. Just scrap it.
Let me stop my screen share to show you something kind of cool.
Josh, you should just
show the stack.
Dump it. Start something else, you know.
Here's my script, right? That's all that's left, that chunk.
Nice.
So 3 pages.
Are you having anxiety about it, or like, is it feel weird because it's such a long journey?
I mean, there's a bunch of that, of course, like, because anytime you are close to finishing something that took a long time, it's like super intimidating, because I'm like, okay, so now I have to like design a cover and like figure out how to get it out there, and like, and then the very thing you were mentioning is something I'm going to be try to be really conscious of when I'm done, is to like, I'm going to try to spend 3 months just pushing it, and that's it. And that, like, and if I do a side project, it'll be completely different. Just to like give it a shot, because I feel like I do the same exact thing. I'll have like a poster that I promote for like a day, and then I forget that I did it, and I'll be talking with friends on like one of these things or something, and they'll be like, and you can get that poster at this part on my store. And I'm like, oh, I don't do that enough. Like, I don't push things enough. And so I do think like this one, because there's so much time invested in it, I need to like really be cognizant of that. Maybe I'll just use you guys as like a peer group to just be like, stop, dude, stop doing what you're doing and promote you know.
Well, I mean, you and I have talked about doing this because I mean, I finished Tongue Cut Sparrow a long time ago now. I don't know, last year.
Yeah.
And you know, I shopped it around to a couple literary agents, and then I was like, that's boring. I'm gonna do stuff now, and it's sat. And so, like, I'll take it. I'll take your ignoring the promotion and raise it a level to where I hate the thing that I finished because it's not what I'm working on anymore. Yeah. And so, like, some people will be like, "Oh, I love that thing," and I almost want to talk them out of it. Like, no, you should look at this thing that I haven't finished though. Like, it's amazing. Like, you should check this out. And ignore the thing that's done that you want to, you know, do something with. Like, I don't know. It's so weird.
Yeah, I've had that moment where somebody's like, I really like this thing. And you're like, really? Which is like the wrong response if somebody's saying they like your work, you know?
Yeah, it's like, what's wrong with you? I hate that.
Just be like, really? You should.
It's kind of like the thing where is your favorite project that you've done anybody else's favorite project?
Never.
It's rare. I mean, I think a lot of creators would probably say that too.
So what's while we're at it, like, what are your personal favorites of your animations?
Unlike a lot of creators, 9 times out of 10 they'll say, "Well, it's the latest thing I've done, Josh. Thanks for asking." But it's not true. Okay, over the years, I think the things that stand out to me that I really like a lot. I have a film actually that I did about a year ago, Infinity Pool, that I mentioned. That's one of my favorite things because I love the soundtrack. I did it with my cousin Mike, and the music. So it sounds like the creepiest Simon and Garfunkel type weird music that you'll ever hear. So that's kind of a personal favorite. I did a cartoon called Cherries in the Snow.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite because that's like a genre of 80s, like, you know, lowered mini trucks and, you know.
Mm-hmm. Featuring Jose Cabrera's.
Yeah. Voice. So I like that. That was one of my favorite things. I had so much fun working on that. That's one of my favorite things because of the process. It was so much fun doing it. But jumping back, I mentioned San Giorno Must Die. That's always been one of my favorites. Actually, Freak Daddy was one of my favorites too, because that I learned a lot on that, doing that one, because my method now that I use came up. For a while, I called it the Freak Daddy method, the way I animate, because I took that method and used it going forward to this day. I did a cartoon called Lady and the Tramp. I did one called Peter Pan. Gosh, there's so many.
That one time you worked with Mary Blair and
yeah, mm-hmm.
That was pretty good.
But I mean, and then I know your favorite. You said John Henry Unicorn. That's always special to me too.
I think that one is particularly my favorite because I'm like, this is one of my side projects that, like, this is the voice I have to shut up while I'm finishing this job because, like I said, I relate to what you were talking about because right now I'm just getting flooded with like, you should work on this, and I'm like, it's like having to fight you're your own worst enemy at the end of a project where you're just like, why don't you ditch this and record some music? And I've been recording more music than I should, which I'm not going to do anything with. So, but yes, one of my side things that I'd like to do is like an expose on an ex-cult member. And like, so just creepy cults are like an indulgence of mine. It's a wormhole that like I will every once in a while open on YouTube and just kind of go down the rabbit hole and just watch the whole thing. So like I think it's particularly my favorite of yours just because the data it's mining is so good.
I love cults. I mean, I hope to start one day, actually.
Not that Henry Unicorn, like the Unicornian belief system is not a cult. I just want to be clear about that. It's a very, legit belief system.
It's what do you call that? Where they get tax breaks? It's Schedule 9. I don't know what it's called.
Tax shelter.
It's a tax. It's official church. But I mean, you know, the other thing is, I guess, as creators, we have to ask ourselves, do we perceive our own work the same way other people perceive it? And I think it's kind of like having a bad haircut. You know, you can walk around town going, yeah, you like this? Yeah. People are going, oh my God, his head looks pointy. Or, you know, do we perceive our own, or in good and bad? You mentioned that people will mention, oh, I really like this. And you're like, why? You know,
Yeah.
because they perceive it differently than you. And that's why, that's a very tricky one for me. It's a very tricky one for me. I can say what I like, you know, the things I mentioned. There's lots of things I like that I've done, but I don't know if people perceive them anywhere near the same way that I do. You know, I don't know how you guys feel about that. If when you're doing your work and you're done with it and it's out there, do you think audiences are seeing the same thing you're seeing?
I don't think it's possible, because the way that we perceive the world is based on our experience, and each of us has different experiences. And so what means something to someone means something else to somebody else for completely different reasons. And so I think, you know, our perception of ourselves is different than other people's perception of us. And I think that's the same with work. You know, you look at like a movie, and it's not like everybody has the same experience with that movie, but they've all seen the same visuals and heard the same sounds, but they interpreted it through the lens of their life.
I recently went on the Guardians of Galaxy ride at Disneyland. I've never been on it. And my nephew and a few other people were telling me, oh, I know you don't like roller coasters, but you're going to love this. It's not a roller coaster. It's got music and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, really? Oh, okay. And I went on it. I was going to unbuckle my seat and jump off of the ride. It was so bad. Like, I hated it because I don't like roller coasters. And it's like the biggest, like my stomach was dropping. But I thought to myself, oh my God, like we're on different wavelengths when it comes to this. Like their perception of it was so different than mine, you know?
Yeah.
And it could be like that with movies or like violence or language or tone. Like people tell me all the time how skeezy and sketchy my stuff looks and everything like that. And I don't even, tell you the truth, I don't even see it that way. It's like, it looks normal to me, but it's like because my mind is used to my stuff after so many years. So it's kind of the same thing. If you're in a hardcore band and you play something for something, they're like, it's kind of loud. You're like, it's not loud. This is one of our ballads. What are you talking about? You know? So that's kind of where I was going at. It's like, are we so used to our own stuff that we see it differently than audiences? Like Scott's stuff is super violent.
Yeah.
But I'm sure he's used to it because he beats his dogs. So I saw it. I have it on film right there.
Well, and no one else was there for the creation of that thing. Like my experience with something that I made, you know, is exponentially huge compared to, you know, if I spend a month animating 15 seconds of something, to somebody else, they watch it for 15 seconds, but that was a month of my life. And so it's a totally distorted view of everything.
Cory, has this happened? I know you're going to say yes. Has this happened? Have you animated a shot where you're like, this is cool. This is a cool shot. This is the best shot ever. And then it comes to a thing where you're like, it kind of doesn't fit here. It kind of makes the scene go a little bit too long, or for whatever reason, but you just had to include it because you spent so much time doing it, or it becomes a little bit precious to you.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's the we had a whole episode talking about opportunity costs and talking about like sunk costs, where like I sunk all that time into that, and so thus it has value. And it's like, no, you sunk time, and you know the value is intrinsic or not, but the time that you added to it isn't.
Every animator faces that challenge when it comes to editing, because think about it. If we have 5 seconds that we want to cut from something because the shot's too long, that's 5 seconds that we ended up spending, like animating, creating, putting blinks, adding a car in the background, adding, like we created that 5 seconds, and then to cut it, you're like, man, I should have a reel of all my cut shots so that the world can see that, but nobody cares really. But that's how you feel animating it.
Well, let me ask you this: have you ever done something where, and maybe I'm just vain, but I do this all the time with close friends and family, where I do something, I show it to people, and they're like, "Cool." I'm like, that wasn't a good enough response. I need to show you this again because obviously you missed this important frame, or whatever. Like, you don't understand that this thing was cool, and you have to like explain it to them, and then you realize if you've got to explain it, it wasn't that cool.
Yeah, that's I heard there's the actress Awkwafina. An interview with her, and she was talking about the movie she just made called The Farewell, where she has cancer in it, and she showed it for her grandmother, and her grandmother's kind of judgy, older Chinese lady, and she was just kind of and then the movie comes to the end of the movie, and the big scene is coming, and her grandma gets up, and she's like, "Grandma, where are you going?" She's like, "I have food. I got to make the food. It's 5 o'clock." And her grandma like left the room, like 5 minutes of the movie, like the big reveal or her big acting scene. But that's because it's just like they got what they needed that's just how she's wired,
Yeah.
People are like that. People like audiences without meaning to be can be super like cruel, or they don't care how much time we spend on something.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like you find those ones that really like are invested in your stuff, and those are the ones that you kind of create for.
Yeah. I completely relate to that because like I've had my first comic I spent about a year on, and I remember when I first got it printed, and this was like print on demand and stuff. I like gave it to friends, and they just flip through it like right in front of me and be like, "That was pretty good." There's a year, just
that is my life.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a similar thing to like, when I present work to like clients and stuff, and it's like, 80 designs, and they're just like, thump, 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 thump. Oh, I like this. Thump, thump. This is good. And it's amazing. It is amazing how like the time spent creating something really is kind of.
To be honest with you, unless we're in a theater, unless I'm doing a screening, I hate showing people my stuff in person, because I've been on the other side of that, where people have shown me, "Let me show you this really cool video I found on YouTube," and you're like, you have to sit there. I hate that feeling.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, and it's totally a double standard, I think, for creators, right?
Yeah, but I mean, I understand where you're coming from with that, though, because I think part of me so fears rejection that I'm like very careful about. I don't, what? It's funny because when I'm showing my stuff in theaters for like paying audiences, I won't say I have no fear, but it's like it doesn't bother me. I'm like, I don't know, it's just a different scenario. But when if you want to torture me at a party, gather around people and go, "Hey guys, come here, look at Jim's cartoon," because then I just feel like how do you not feel like a douchebag standing there and going, yeah. I don't know how to react to that. I could go, "Hey, I'm great. Look at, I'm gonna stand by the," or you could just run away. Where did Jim go? Which is usually what I do. But I don't like that feeling. But unless they're, like I said, like a paying audience, they paid their money. They're there. I guess because they're there more like, "Hey, I want to be here."
Yeah, and I guess that would be more equivalent to like for instance, if I were to like play a song on a guitar for somebody, I'd feel a lot more nervous like playing a song to just like one person than I would in front of like at a show. Because at a show, like somebody's you got a group of people who paid money to go there.
Yeah,
They're ready to watch you and stuff. So there's like this weird kind of feeling of like at ease and like, well, if you don't like this, F you, kind of, you know, like at that point, because you're like, yeah, we're gonna rock this show. It's like you guys paid to have a show, and there's a show, so you're gonna get a show. But if like that's a totally different scenario than if I were like, Jim, I wrote a song. I'm gonna pull out my guitar and force you to listen to it. You know,
I'd be like, Josh, you put your shirt back on.
This has happened between Jim and I. And Jim, you will listen to that song.
And he was driving a car at the same time. So that was really weird.
Yeah, the logistics of that were difficult, but I made it work.
Scott, is your microphone even on?
Yeah.
Okay, because I put the laughter validation.
Yeah.
We haven't even heard in this whole episode anything of what Scott's working on. As a fan of Scott, I need to know, what are you working on?
Mostly client stuff, but nothing. I'm actually right now. I just did a real quick. I don't know if I can screen share. This is nothing.
Does the client name rhyme with Corn Hub?
Let's see. So this isn't client work, but it's nothing fancy. I'm just doing this character design. I'm actually going to. I'm creating like a sort of a fake comic, I guess, because I'm going to be releasing a new product. That's another. It's kind of like a pro version of my starter kit where it's got all kinds of tools for creating comics and stuff like that. And in doing so, I want to actually create something with it, with all the tools. And then I'm actually going to do a series of like tutorials, just showing how to basically create comics from start to finish. So creating this just real quick story involving like just 3 characters, only about 2 or 3 pages. And this is one of the villains. This is Madame Masquerade. But I'm just playing around right now. So nothing too exciting.
I think it's ingenious the way that you have products, actual products that are your own, creations. Like you came up with what was it? It's kind of like those ones you find on the back of the comic books when you're a kid.
Yeah.
That type of thinking is the type of thinking that gets somebody to the next level.
I just need somebody to buy the stuff. So I've got the products. I just need them to sell, which comes back to like what you're talking about as far as the marketing and everything. You build the stuff and then you put it out there, and then you don't spend enough time letting people know that it exists. So,
well, and I think there's one common factor that we all share in this arena is that we don't have staff. We don't have a team.
Right. Yeah.
So when you have a team, you have people to assign things to you, and some people take chances and they start spreading their own money around and hiring people to do things like that. And for example, I mentioned Comic Lab earlier, and that Dave Callett, one of the hosts of that show, I mean, he has an assistant, but
right.
he's bringing some money in. So,
yeah.
But I mean, this is a line from actually the last episode, or the episode I'm working on right now of All That Glitters, where it takes money to make money, and it's true. I mean, sometimes it does take money to make money, but also you lose money to make money sometimes. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, I mean, really, what the direction I'm trying to go in is just build passive income streams, so I never have to go back and work for anybody ever again. So, but and hopefully, I mean, that's kind of I'm working for myself now, but if I can keep that going, if I can keep the clients I have going until I can build this up, because I've just done with that.
Well, if you keep doing those Corn Hub jobs, then
yeah. That's where the money is.
I need to register that real quick.
So, Scott, also just, I think it's pretty brilliant that you've built these assets that you can access for how much would it cost me to get your comic?
Are we wrap it up? I think we've been going, but if that's, this is usually what we do in the wrap up. But once again, Josh, it's completely free.
What? You've lost your mind. All right, so we have been going a while. Thank you, Jim and Cory, for joining us and hanging out. And if you guys have watched this, actually, let's kind of hear the pitch. I think you should kind of describe all that glitters for the person who has not seen episode 1 yet. And I think there's 13 up so far.
There's 14.
14. When did 14 go up?
I have 15, 16, 17 pretty much done, but there's 14 up. There's going to be 20. They're about 2.5 minutes each, 3 minutes each. Okay, here's the pitch. Okay. All That Glitters is a story set in the world of the music industry, Los Angeles, modern day. The story of a hapless manager whose cash cow, a rapper named Naughty Boy, gets thrown into jail. And when that happens, his cash flow dries up very quickly. So he finds a new discovery, a group from the country of Bretvia called Dollar Money, gangster rap group. And he soon finds that he's in over his head when he gets involved with the Bretvians. And there's all kinds of hijinks going on. And it has a really cool soundtrack.
It does have a great soundtrack. That's awesome.
You can watch it on YouTube. And if you go to my YouTube channel, I'm just my name, Jim Lujan. Also Instagram, also what else? Facebook, Prodigy, the whole bit, you know.
I imagine there's probably a link in the description as well, right, Josh?
Yes, indeed, there is. So if you
click here,
somewhere down there, and don't,
hey guys, be sure to like my channel and subscribe if you like what you see. Don't forget to click on the notifications.
Ring that bell. Ding, ding, ding.
Hey guys, they always say that. Hey guys.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Guys.
I love it. All right, Cory, where can we find your work?
You can find my work at CoryKerr.com.
All right.
And I don't have anything. I should have something to promote, but I don't. Yeah, so go there and I don't know. 48-hour art check is cool. So Josh and I go live twice a week, Monday, Wednesday, 9 p.m. California time, and talk about all kinds of random stuff while we work on stuff. And yeah, I guess this thing that I'm working on, that'll be coming out, if I plan this correctly, in about 2 months. And I have no idea what I'm doing with it. But you may see it at a convention or at a screen near you somehow, if I can figure that out.
Cory, after we go offline, I have some animation stuff to share with you. So.
Oh yeah, that'll be great.
And then also, I had to say this to you guys. This goes to all of you guys. Have you thought about? I listen to this show a lot in the car driving home, but I have to play it on YouTube.
Oh, I think what you're about to say is going to be my favorite thing.
Oh, I might be on board with this too.
Have you thought about taking the audio and creating a podcast?
Yeah,
weaponizing it, perhaps.
Scott, the person. Well, we'll talk after, but you might know someone who might do that for you. Anyhow, all right. So that's really good advice. All right, well, you're on my channel. You know where to find me because you're here. So if you're here, then as Jim so lucratively told you, hey guys, you're right here. Like my channel, subscribe to my channel, hit that bell. And then you can also check out quarterlystories.com. I just posted a new page yesterday. And if you want to view it in a much more comfortable way on your app or your mobile device, you can check it out at tapas.io and subscribe there as well. That actually helps me gain new readers and stuff. So go do that.
That's the first time I've heard you describe that as comfortable.
Nice. I'm trying. Like I said, I'm weak at pitches, so that will be something I'm going to have to workshop.
If you would like to sit comfortably while you read about depression and anxiety,
that's true. It's an uncomfortable story that you can read in your own comfort. So, then Scott, our channel gets confusing sometimes because I every once in a while I go to watch Artcasters. It's not on my channel. It's on your channel. And then sometimes it's not on either of our channels. It's on Mars. It jumps all over the place. Where do I keep track of this activity?
Yeah, like you said, sometimes it could be on different days. I mean, typically we do it like we're doing it tonight on a Thursday, but you never know. We could do it Wednesday. We get all crazy with the schedule and whose channel it's on, but the easiest way to know exactly where we're going to be and when we're going to be is to join our newsletter. And we don't spam you or anything like that. We just usually about 30 minutes before we go live, we send out a newsletter with a link where you can join us on chat and everything. And so if you join that, you will always know where we're going to be and when we're going to go live. And I just had one other thing I was going to promote. Tomorrow, I'll be on Alterna Comics channel. If you guys follow Alterna Comics, Peter Samedi, I'll be on his channel. We're going to be discussing just the importance of kind of moving away from other people's platforms to something you own, and kind of how that works and everything like that. So
that's exciting, and a good channel and a good publisher too. So I think that'll be cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody in the chats for joining us, and let us know, like in the comments, like what your method of like coming up with animations are if you animate, and if you haven't, let us know why you haven't, because you should.
I just thought of something. I just thought of it. Go to my YouTube channel.
Yes.
And go to my playlist, AI to AE, which will teach you everything you need to know about animating in After Effects if you already understand how to do stuff in Adobe Illustrator or Photoshop. That's what I should promote.
Nice.
The relevant thing.
You should. And like I can attest to the fact that like I am like Cory has an incredible mind for that kind of thing, but it's not hard. He makes it accessible, and so like he's kind of a good go-to if you want to like pick up After Effects. I think prior to knowing Cory, I had messed with like maybe iMovie, and that's how I would edit stuff. And now I feel fairly comfortable on After Effects, and that's all from just like conversations with Cory and some of his videos. So definitely recommend it. All right. Thanks to everybody who joined us, and we will see you guys next week. Bye.